is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
I am so excited to do today's chapter, I'm almost stalling on getting it started, because I'm loving the anticipation.
Death gates,
right?
Death gates. Oh my god. All caps.
But I guess the thing is, so much of this chapter, yes, there is Death Gates, which is exciting, but there's so much more to talk about between Loyal, the marriage, which, by the way, when I'm getting married, the marriage is kind of exciting to talk about. I may dive deeper into that than you might expect.
It is one of the best things ever, honestly. Ogier wedding. Oh,
it's very cute. It's very cute. And I'm going to need feedback on exactly what parts of it I'm going to use in my wedding.
All of it.
It's pretty short, and it wouldn't be that hard. And yeah, it's and then Death Gates and Lewis Theron and implications and Logain and who sent the Trollocs, right? There's so many good questions that come up in this chapter. You know, look at the timestamp now, because I don't think it's going to be a short one.
No.
I kept highlighting, and then I would highlight the next sentence, and then I'd highlight the sentence after that, and then I'd be like, fuck, I just highlighted that whole page.
Yeah, I was really spare with my highlights, because I kept looking at it being like, well, Seth's definitely going to want to talk about that, so I don't need to highlight it. Like, my notes are fairly spare, because it's like, here's just the things I want to make sure that I get in between everything that I know Seth is going to have to say.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah,
no, it's a very
lot.
fun chapter to read. It's a fun chapter in the sense also that, like, you've got a lot of stuff ending and starting, right? Because, like, the hunt for Loyal to get him married to Aerith, the chase, the Ogier chase, like, you know, for that to culminate, and also to have Rand's relationship with Logain and Lewis Theron both really change. Like, there's a serious upgrade in both of those relationships. This is the start of a new phase of Rand feeling kind of hunted. Like, we've got endings and beginnings all explosively happening here in this chapter. Very, very exciting. Not exactly episode 500. We tried to make it episode 500, and then that didn't work out. So it's not 500. It's 493. But, like, this is gonna be a fun chapter.
This is going to be a real fun chapter. And I think for episode 500, this is the thing. From now on, we said this at the beginning of the last episode, we are on the Jordan wrapping up plot lines that he has been setting up for 3 books. And at this point, you know, probably 6 years, right? Like, there's so much going on. And each one of these chapters is a fucking banger. So
yeah. So with that, are we ready to get into Vows?
I kind of wanted to try something a little bit different for the read-in, because it's Loyal. And it's not written as Loyal POVs, but if you take the he's and turn them into I's, it is Loyal's POV, right? So I kind of want to do the read-in Loyal's POV, replacing the he's with I's in a Kramer Loyal voice. Okay. I don't. Okay, so
if you hate it,
it
you
might
can start
be.
over at the beginning.
If you hate it, we'll do just a normal.
But
reading.
I like that idea. I like it.
Chapter 19, Vows. The symbol is the wheel and snake, because threads in the pattern. I don't know. That's just momentous things happening.
Heavy plot stuff. Big important plotty things.
Uneasy, I watched Nynaeve glide off down the lamplit corridor in one direction and Varen in the other. Neither was much taller than my waist, but they were Aes Sedai. The fact knotted my tongue sufficiently but that by the time I had worked up the nerve to ask one of them to accompany me, both were out of sight around sharp corners. The manor house was a rambling place, added to over many years with no real overall plan that I could discern, and hallways frequently met at odd angles. I really wished I had an Aes Sedai for company when I faced my mother. Even Codswain, although she made me very nervous with how she was always pinching at Rand. Sooner or later, Rand was going to explode. He was not the same man I first met in Camelin, or even the man I left in Carian. The mood around Rand was dark and stony now, a dense patch of lion's claw and treacherous ground underfoot. The whole house felt that way with Rand in it. A lean, gray-haired serving woman carrying a basket of folded towels gave a start, then shook her head and muttered something under her breath before offering me a brief curtsy and walking on. She made a small sidestep as though she was moving around something, or someone. I stared at the spot and scratched behind my ear. Maybe I could only see Ogier dead. Not that I actually wanted to. It was sad enough just knowing that human dead could no longer rest. Having the same confirmed from Ogier would be enough to break my heart. Most likely they would appear only in side steading in any case. I would very much like to see a town vanish, though. Not a real town, but a town that was as dead as those spirits the humans claimed to see. You might be able to walk the streets before it melted, and see what people were like before the War of the 100 Years, or even the Trolloc Wars. So Varen said, and she seemed to know a very great deal about it. That would certainly be worth a mention in my book. It was going to be a fine book. Scratching my beard with 2 fingers, the thing itched. I sighed. It would have been a fine book.
That was fantastic. I love it so much. Yeah.
That was fun. The second paragraph with my book was a lot better and easier.
Yeah, that definitely you learned a lot about how to do that voice over the course of doing those 2 paragraphs. You could like hear the learning curve. Yeah, especially once I cut out all the parts where you broke out of it. It's going to be a very interesting, like, you sliding in and out and just oscillating around it until you figure it out by the end. Like, yeah.
Well, you know, this is why Michael Kramer and Kate Redding are the masters, because that was hard, and that was really difficult, I will say, to maintain a consistent voice. And they just do it constantly. Anyway,
it's a skill that takes years to learn. But yeah, there's a couple things to talk about in that excellent read.
Totally.
First of all, just Loyal really catching the vibe between Cadsuane and Rand, that she is actively poking at him because he is so close to exploding, and that's the only way she knows how to try to, like, lacerate that boil or whatever. Like, she needs him to explode to some degree, and Loyal doesn't get her reasoning, but he does see what is happening.
The Aes Sedai make him nervous, right? We've seen that before with Loyal, right? Here he's saying, like, he can't even ask one of them to accompany him.
Well, but specifically Cadsuane at Rand is something that he's pointing out as, like, he can see what Cadsuane's doing, and he is afraid of all of it. Because, you know, he's an emotional creature. He doesn't know things, he feels things.
And he feels Rand is basically this storm that's about to break, and also he knows how dangerous Rand is, right? Like,
to a greater degree than most people, because, again, he's got, like, the dog spidey senses, right? Like, he knows things at a deep level that the mind cannot touch.
I mean, he's Rand's therapy dog, let's be honest.
If he had more time with Rand, Rand would probably do a lot better.
Listen, Rand has to go to work. He left the dog at home. Loyal didn't want to be left at home, but...
Yeah, he needed his therapy Ogier. His service Ogier.
I still think Loyal's a great name for a puppy.
Oh my god,
dog.
Totally.
What's your dog's name? Loyal? Oh, he's loyal. Get
it?
But also, you'd spell it loyal, and we'd all know it was...
And then everyone would be like, that's a really weird way to spell it, except for, like, one person who'd be like,
Let me tell you, it's more than one person. I'm shocked how many people in my workplace have read The Wheel of Time. And how many people are in my life that I'm discovering. If you are out about enjoying The Wheel of Time, people will approach you and be like, hey, I also read The Wheel of Time. Can you, connect me to anybody else who's read The Wheel of Time? Because, I don't really want people to know about it because there's some prejudice in the workplace against people who read. And, listen, so I know you're out about this in public and you take a pretty big risk, and I appreciate that. Is there any way you could connect me to other people?
And see, visibility and representation matter, people.
So you did see what I was doing there. So then the next step, of course, we've got the dead people. And that's where I want to get into the philosophical discussion about the dead Ogier and them only appearing on steadings. And then I need to tie that into the Book of Translation, which we talk about later. Because, okay, here's Loyal saying that if Ogier dead did appear, they would only appear on Ogier steadings.
On the edges of steadings. In the real world, not in steadings. On the edges of steadings, but in the real world part. Right?
No.
Most likely they'd only appear...
Most likely they'll appear inside steading in any case.
But isn't it that they appear on the outside in the actual last battle?
Oh, gosh, I don't remember. That's a good check. Yeah, because don't they...
Because I think that they appear on the outside looking in, and it's really creepy. That's an image that, lives in my head. So I'm pretty sure I'm not making it up because I wish it would go away. So I'm pretty sure it was put there forcibly.
So then what is... Yeah, so then I have to wonder, what is going on with the last battle in Ogier steading? And, they and the Book of Translation really appears to say that the steadings are islands of another world, translated, right, in the mathematical sense of translate, meaning moving from one place to another, not in the grammatical version of translating from one language to another, right? They are translated from one world to another, and somehow the fact that there's...
Because they're interdimensional aliens.
Yeah, right, because... Yes, right. Okay.
Yes.
I guess that's, that's just they're interdimensional aliens. How else do you take this evidence and what else can you say about it? They're clearly, pulled in from a portal world or some other, plane even of existence. That's what but it doesn't seem like it's some other plane of existence. It does seem like it literally is just a portal world or a parallel universe where they are moving from one place to the other.
Yeah, I mean, some parallel universe variation on the sentient hominid with a love of books,
Right.
it's a thing that exists. But we need to find that we need to find out about how they appear in the last battle. Obviously, I have not read those books recently, so I don't fucking remember, because when I read this, my brain just put the word outside there until you made me go and read it with my actual eyeballs and not my expectations.
Isn't that funny how the brain works?
God, never trust your brain, gang. Figure out a way to triangulate what the truth might possibly be with your brain as the least important part of said triangle, because
So then somehow... clearly the Dark One still has an effect. It's just got to be this passive effect that he's creating. It can't be something he's actively doing.
Yeah, I think because the Dark One is Lord of the Grave, blah, 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 but also only captures certain souls, right? So it's that the general veil between death and life would get a little blurrier during his push during his Ragnarok, Army of the Dead kind of situation, right? That makes sense. Even people who aren't in the army are still being revived in some fashion, because just the power that death has is getting weird at the end of days.
I'd almost say it's almost like time is getting wibbly wobbly, right? That you have, because these people are just reenacting their lives in some ways, right? These aren't people that are, yes, they're dead, but they're not ghosts coming back to haunt the living and react to the living, right?
Echoes.
Yeah, they're more echoes. They're more...
Because people always see people that they know and that they recognize that have been dead for 4 or 5 generations. But it's there's grandma or whatever. And it's so it's very much...
Well, not necessarily. Because, Matt just sees the dead people on the street. I think it's just the reappearing where they used to be. So if you're living in grandma's house, you're going to see grandma.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is like we're in these old rambling houses that people have inhabited forever and ever, and the same family is still there. And they're not seeing random dead people. They're seeing the people who used to walk these hallways, right?
Yes.
Matt is seeing just whoever, because he's in town of the week. So, of course, he doesn't recognize anyone. And same in the tower, right? They don't see random people. They see Aes Sedai. So it does seem to be very much tied to the places that people used to be physically. So, yeah, much more like echoes than poltergeists.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think being Lord of the Grave, that might even be a bit of a misnomer, because like these ghosts aren't. Well, I was gonna say the only thing is you can get sucked into them, right?
And that's the thing I wanted to point out is Loyal's naive assumption that you could just go on a field trip through one of these towns. And I'm thinking of the peddler sinking into the ground with the Shiotan village, like screaming with his horses. It's like Loyal, I hope you never see one of those towns, because then you're going to get dead.
You might see a lot more of it than you think, right? Like
exactly.
That's the question. Are you just teleported back in time then? Is there some weird timey-wimey and you just wake up, you're sucked down, and you're like, oh shit, now I'm in the past forever?
I mean, I'd like to assume so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, a la the Big Bang, all of time and space exist at one place in one point. All of everything that has ever existed at the point of the Big Bang. So like there's no reason why he can't like live out a life of, like a Yankee in King Arthur's court or whatever.
And then here's my other question from that paragraph: why can't Loyal see human dead?
I assumed it was just an interspecies thing. You can only see people with whom you have some form of kinship, and Ogier, being interdimensional, don't have any genetic kinship to humans, because they're just from another plane of existence altogether. I'm assuming humans won't be able to see Ogier dead either.
We'll have to check that bit in the last battle again, because that it just seems very weird.
Yeah.
And it could just be that this is the only time that the spirit maybe appears to just one person. Maybe sometimes spirit appear to some people and not others, right? Like if these are just echoes, right? Who says that everybody can see them?
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's that. Because Tuon didn't see the people that Matt was dodging around. Are you dancing? Like, I mean, because she's not seeing the things he's dodging.
Exactly. So maybe, like, this isn't an Ogier human person. This is just, like, that spirits might only appear to some people and not to others. And it has nothing to do with Loyal not being able to see human spirits.
And everything to do with Loyal being in a place where he's never known anyone at all, because he's just there for a few days with Rand. And it's just not his space. That's a totally valid possibility. RJ wants us to think it's interspecies, or is it? That's the question.
I think sometimes Jordan, like, literally would leave both options open, because he was like, I don't know, I'll figure it out later.
Yeah, and we are later.
And I look like a genius.
We are later.
Yeah, we are later. Would you like to proceed to paragraph 3 of the chapter?
Let us do that.
We might be on this one for a while. There was a line here that reminded me of you. Put off clearing the bush and you always find chokevine in it. The fact that you like started listening to Wheel of Time or was it the podcast while you were clearing?
Oh, Wheel of Time.
Yeah. Berry bushes.
Yes, that's where a great many of my much of my listens of the audiobook that led to me being the Aradiapedia you know and love today was done while clearing blackberry brush, specifically because the Pacific Northwest is choking to death on the invasive fuckers.
When I think chokevine, I think blackberry bush.
Yeah. Imagine like an 8-foot tall wall of blackberries, and there's nothing else. And if you're not familiar with blackberries, imagine kudzu, but like
with thorns the size of your thumbnail.
Very large thorns and a slightly brittler, vinier, like branchy or brushier sort of structure, a bit less like droopy, a bit more brittle.
But it also clings to everything.
Yeah, and I would go out there with like pruning shears and a rake, and I would just kind of like cut it down in chunks and then roll it up into these burritos and kind of like roll those across the ground and stack them up until I had a big ol' pile of those things and like, you know, a knee-high field of stumps, and then we would set fire to it and try to burn it down. And I did that for like 3 years at the land I was at, you know. Obviously all that work has gone away, come back, gone away, come back, because this stuff grows really fast. But like I did a lot of my learning of being able to just call up quotes from the book, like, oh yeah, no, I just know exactly how Michael and Kate said it at that point. A lot of that I did specifically while clearing blackberries. Like I did find the books before then, I did listen to them after then, but like the muscle memory of just being out there for hours just listening to these books and like occasionally having to give a little blood to the war, and just like I love killing plants. Like I'm, you know, I know you hate astrology, Seth, but so close your ears, but I'm a Virgo, and Virgos are normally associated with gardening. I am so good at killing plants. I am so good at killing plants. I cannot start a garden to fucking save my life, but I can kill plants so good. I love taking them down. It feels like hand-to-hand combat. It's great. And yeah, Michael and Kate were just in my ears the whole time I was doing that. I never listened to anything else. Just Wheel of Time over and over and over and over and over.
Oh, okay, Balthamel, taking out the Green Man and loving it. Just call you Halima from now on. Jesus.
That would be a very interesting cosplay.
That could be fun.
Grandal is so over. I'm playing Halima.
I'm gonna go as Halima, actually.
Ooh, nice.
I'm Balthamel in his physical body, who's then become Halima, but then goes back to Balthamel. I don't know. I'm trying to make that work somehow.
We'll workshop it.
Yeah, we'll workshop it. Ogier rooms, right? This is a fucking old-ass manor, and it's got Ogier stairs, Ogier rooms, it's beds,
Ogier
right?
beds, Ogier decorations.
It just shows how important Ogier used to be.
Yes, really. I mean, that's just what it is that these people held on to that respect for longer than almost anyone else. But like this used to be common. When the Ogier go out and they go, wow, no one remembers us anymore, what the hell happened, all the beds don't fit, this is what they were expecting. This is the kind of hospitality that they assumed would just be in perpetuity, because obviously.
But how much of this is there simply because no one got rid of it? Not, right? Like, this is a sprawling mansion that keeps getting added onto and added onto and added onto. Nobody's taking down what used to be there. So it's not so much that they're like, oh, let's hold on to the tradition and let's remember the Ogier as, oh, yeah, we've got one of those rooms. Let's air it out. Oh, there's some dust in here, but yeah, we can replace the bedding. You know, that's kind of what I imagine.
Yeah, I imagine that it was one of those things where there was enough respect for the Ogier when it was relevant that no one ever wanted to get rid of it. Like there was never any like, fuck the Ogier. It was like, no, the Ogier are so important, they might come back someday. The Ogier are so important, they might come back someday. Eventually it just becomes, we just respect those rooms for some reason. We don't really expect the Ogier to come back, but like we would never get rid of them. I mean, like they were really important to great grandma. Like, no, we're not gonna like get rid of it. That would be disrespectful to like the memory of our own ancestors, even if we don't really expect Ogier guests. And then there's 200 years of dust, but you know, the bowl of sung wood is still sitting on the cabinet.
And one other thing to consider, they are on the path between Kyrien and Shangtai Stedding, right? We learn that later. His mother has given up on the search for finding him and has left Kyrien and goes to Shangtai Stedding. And so they might be on one of the most popular Ogier travel ways, right? Because Shangtai Stedding is one of the places where Ogier are the most outgoing, and Kyrien, you know, has one of those major cities where they might go to, right? So if this is on the path between them, which it seems to be, because why the fuck else are the right? Because they're not looking for Loyal, they just stumble across him in this random town, in this random manor in the middle of the woods, I guess. I was kind of upset that I don't have an answer for that. Like, I really was looking for, like, why did they find him there? And it just seems to be they gave up on the search, and Taviran said, yep. Time to find your son. He needs to go talk to the stump in order to convince everybody to stay for the last battle.
Right, he can't do that until he's married, because Aerith is the secret weapon that Loyal does not realize he needs. Yeah, that's all I got. But yeah, it's a cool detail to see what a properly furnished Ogier accommodation is supposed to look like.
Oh yeah, so my theory is that maybe more people are coming through here, so maybe it gets more use than I was initially thinking.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that makes a lot of sense, that that's part of why the accommodations lasted here longest and still had respect, was because it's like, we've always been on this route. We've always been prone to having like guests of note who need to stay for a night or two. Like, of course we maintain this. Like, of course that's just part of our like house design, and you would never tear those rooms down, because that's part of who we are, is the people who provide Airbnb accommodations next to the airport or whatever.
Also, yeah, country home, traditions, they don't really keep up with the times as much. They might be more traditional.
As a person with a country home.
As a person who's been to your country home. Strange that Codswain knew of his mother. Corvril, daughter of Ella, daughter of Soong, was a famous speaker, but he had not realized she was known outside.
Outside.
So, I mean, Codswain's 300. His mother is, I don't think, quite 300, because Elder Hamon's 300, and she's younger than Elder Hamon, but, there's 300-ish years, maybe 200-ish years in which they could have encountered each other. And the way Codswain travels, I think she's been in Steading before. I think she's been to Steading Shanghai before. Like, I don't think there's a mystery there. I think it's just we have 200 years of history when these people could have encountered each other. And it's not spelled out when they did, but I'm assuming they did at some point. And probably had a blowout of an argument.
No, I totally could see that Codswain would not be intimidated by going into a Steading and losing the source. I mean, look what she does when she gets her hands on an ADAM. She immediately puts it on to try to figure it out, right? Like,
how did she figure out her well? She must have gone into a Steading at some point, right?
Right. She was born in Farmatting, which is an artificial Steading. Like, she would not be intimidated by that, which so many Aes Sedai are. And she probably had a curiosity about testing theories with like men who had to be gentled because they could channel and Steading, because she was interested in actually doing the job that the Reds were supposed to be doing. And, we see that with Algaren's brother, like the story of that. Like, so presumably she would have been, cruising around looking for Steading at some point that wanted to talk. And Steading Shanghai is known as being one of the more friendly, outgoing Steading. It totally makes sense that she would have started her search there, being like, who wants to talk with me about stuff? And I could totally see a famous speaker being like, who is this human who has the audacity to come in here? And yeah, they probably had a very interesting discussion.
Similar to, I imagine, like a Varen Codswain relationship between them.
Totally. Because they're not too dissimilar in age or craftiness, just in very different spheres. So they can see each other. Or like with Soralia, like kind of, equals, not really in a competitive way, just in a...
And honestly, this is one of the few people I can see Codswain having respect for. An Ogier elder speaker, right? Like, the age, the intelligence, the patience, right? Like, Codswain doesn't respect many people, right? She thinks they're children and young and immature.
An Ogier,
but
though.
An Ogier, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And the reverse is true. The Ogier respect Aes Sedai, right? So
yeah,
I can see a lot of mutual respect between these two parties.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I agree. There's no mystery there. There's just two professionals who happen to be alike in standing, who have interacted at work events or whatever. Cross-disciplinary events.
And then we get Chekhov's axe. Which is, okay, in the room, there's this big description of the room, everything that's going on inside of it. And on the wall are two shiny axes and two shining pruning knives. And in the room, we have two men and two women. I wonder if this will come in handy later.
But is it really Chekhov's axe if it gets used?
Yeah, that's the whole point of Chekhov's axe, is Chekhov's gun is you can't put a gun on the wall, and then at some point later in the show, it has to be used. It has to be shot.
Oh, I thought the joke was that it's the thing that should have been used, but then isn't.
Oh God, am I wrong about that?
I have no idea. It's not one that I've seen very often.
Hold on. Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds more like a red herring.
Yeah, I thought that it was the name of a specific kind of red herring, but it's not one of the idioms that I see used particularly often, so I could be very wrong about that. Would not be surprised.
Yes. Chekhov's gun is the narrative principle that states that every element in a story must be necessary and irrelevant elements should be removed.
Okay.
For example, if a writer features a gun in the story, there must be a reason for it, such as being fired sometime later in the plot.
I've been wrong this whole time. Cool.
Why do we see the axe on the wall? It's because at some time later it's going to get pulled down and used.
Okay, see, so okay, I'm gonna connect this to a completely other part of my life, which is that I am terrible at video games. And the reason that I'm terrible at video games is that I am constitutionally incapable of following the wayfinding that the game designers put into the game. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out where they want me to go, and will inevitably go everywhere else first and end up doing entire storylines fucking backwards because I went left instead of right, even though in hindsight, they clearly made where I was supposed to go obvious. And I feel like not understanding Chekhov's gun is just the most symbolic fucking conclusion to like, this is my problem. I literally don't understand what is foreshadowing. I cannot. Which is ironic given the whole Wheel of Time thing, but oh my God.
So basically saying you came upon two paths in a forest and you took the path less traveled and it made video games really fucking hard.
Yes. So hard. Like more than 50% of the time I go the wrong way and click on the wrong clues. And like, it's just really infuriating. I'm constantly having to go to walkthroughs to be like, but that was too obvious. And it's because I'm always like, that was too obvious. Clearly, I'm not supposed to do that because it's too obvious. And then I would end up eaten by a monster. I have to find the sneaky way. And then I end up like literally like doing plot segments backwards. And it's like annoying.
I find myself doing the same thing. I love very linear games where you can't do anything except the thing that that you're supposed to do. Like I actually kind of like being railroaded in a video game.
Oh my God, I'm feeling so validated by chat and by you right now.
Yeah, no, it seems to be very common for those of us who read stories rather than play video games, right? We expect a story to proceed in a linear fashion, and when it doesn't, it drives us a little bit nuts.
Oh my God, yeah, there is something about us birds flocking together over here in this corner of the internet. Oh my God.
So back to the books, there's a description of Aerith, which I have some questions about.
Oh, are we going to go full Avienda describing Elaine on Aerith now?
No, not that bad. I'm just curious. What exactly is the color of the silverbell's ripe seed pod?
I'm assuming silver.
God damn it, that's obvious now that you say that.
I'm imagining like a really beautiful, like gray, like slightly like new hairs, fuzzy, like little seed pod. And it's got to be silver gray, and all like. And none of the words that are coming to mind I want to say, given language around women's existence in the world at this point. But yeah, I imagine silver or gray in the color of eyes, because gray eyes is a thing. Rand has eyes that are sometimes gray.
That's true. Yeah, sort of a gray. He does describe gray eyes a lot in his books. And I have to wonder, like, Jordan, were you just a little colorblind? Like, did you see blue eyes as gray? Just wondering.
Interesting
just thought.
question.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I could do the whole description of Aerith in Loyal's voice, but I think I am not going to do that.
Yeah, it's just, let's just say it's really cute when you're reading it, because it's like, Loyal, you have the biggest freaking crush on this girl. Like, these are the thoughts of a man in love. I mean, let's be real.
Totally. And that mysterious smile where he's like, she couldn't know what I was thinking, could she? Yeah. She knows, Loyal. Yeah. She knows. Yeah, she saw you looking at her. Like,
yeah, and she's going, oh boy, he really does like me. Like, I mean, everything's fine, Loyal. You're being silly. It's very, very cute. But yes, I don't think we need a blow-by-blow read.
And then I just love this contrast between Loyal mother and Aerith.
Oh my, okay. So there's two different dynamics here that I love. Well, okay, there's the before wedding dynamic, and then there's the after wedding dynamic.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Because before, it's really it's Elder Hammond against the two women, right? There's the whole thing where Elder Hammond is trying to tell the story to Loyal, and the women keep interjecting things, and it's like a very funny, like, everyone talking over each other conversation with Ogier, which just makes it even funnier because they're like these big, slow bumblebee voices, but also they're like ADHD levels of talking over each other. It's really funny.
Yeah, because it's like, what would happen if you got a bunch of Loyals together in a room, right? That they just keep going, right? So you have to talk over each other for anyone to get a word in edgewise.
Right? It's the autistic representation in this scene is so real.
Also, listening to Michael Kramer try and do three different Ogier voices for a whole chapter and keep them consistent and different is absolutely an incredible, like, if you're interested in how to try and just duplicate that, like, if you can do that, you can do anything.
That must have been a grueling day of work.
Yeah.
Days even.
Or just fun. I bet he had a blast. I'll be honest.
I bet it was grueling on his voice, like his literal like voice.
Yes,
I bet that
true.
was a tiring day of work he put in at the studio. But yes, I'm sure it was very, very fun intellectually. Mm-hmm. So they basically reiterate the story and remind us of all the stuff Loyal's done, you know, like first he's brave in the two rivers, then the Aiel are calling him brave, then we were wet, then we were dry. It's just a whole thing.
And I love at every step Aerith is like, and you were so heroic there and saved those people, and then you were so brave over there, and then oh my god, you just everyone's so happy. I think you're just wonderful. You know, it's just like, and you're like, honey, I think you may. I mean, she's been basically following him this whole time at every place she goes. Because, like, we've kind of been hearing it from his POV, and he's like, oh, I barely do anything. I just stand there and protect the children. Okay. And murder a couple of Murdrawl, right, to make sure that happens, right? No bait NBD, right? Yeah. So, yeah, there's things like that. And she's hearing it from the people who are basically worshiping his achievements and are like, oh my god, he was amazing, of course, you know. And I'm sure his stories grow a little bit in the telling because he's an Ogier, right? But like,
he saved all the children. I mean, like, a little bit of aggrandizement is gonna happen. Like, legends fade to myth, and the myths are fucking epic.
It's that, like, when did you know you wanted to marry him? So when I found out he saved the group of school children, that was somewhat convincing.
Yeah, she's following him around, like, basically just on a glorified camping trip with her future mother-in-law and the principal from the school. Awkward as hell.
Right.
But every now and then they run across a group of people who were like, your future husband is like literally Jesus.
Yeah, right.
Like, he saved half of our group. He was amazing. Also, did you know he reads books? Like, everywhere she goes, that's what she's hearing. And I mean, I'm sure the mother-in-law thing made it a tough sell, but that all the village people were very nice. And so that, you know, pulled her back over, because Culverall seems like a lot.
Oh God. Yeah. Well, I did want to say this. In Kyrian, your mother decided she couldn't stay away from the Great Stump any longer, though I cannot say why, since they aren't likely to reach any sort of decision for another year or two. So we set out to return to Steading Shangtai and hope we could find you later. And that's all we get about how they find him.
Taviran.
Yeah, okay. So I had to bring that up, that, like, I can't say why. The why is she must Taviran twisting. Got her there at the right place at the right time. Which meant Loyal running the whole time was silly, because they were never going to catch him until the pattern was ready.
Or he would have gotten married and freed of his mother's influence books and books ago, much like Avienda could have become a wise one without all the shenanigans if she had just stood up for herself.
But would Loyal have the motivation to face the terror of the world outside if he wasn't fleeing from his mother?
I mean, cause and effect, man.
Would he really have dove deep into the danger that he did? Had some alliteration to it. If he hadn't been fleeing from the terror that is his mother.
And would he have taken those risks if he was a newly married man? Like, being torn between a wife who wants to settle down and the desire to be, you know, a bachelor adventurer. Maybe it would be better to just be a bachelor adventurer running from the nemesis that is your mother. Mm-hmm. For all things. I don't know. But Taviran said, yoink, let's have it happen now. And then we have the world's shortest wedding ceremony, which nobody expected from the Ogier. Everyone expected the Ogier to be like Catholic levels of like 4 days later, you may now kiss the bride. But no, it's like a page. It's like, that's it. Like the Ogier, when they're serious, they don't fuck around.
And I just love the flirting between the two of them. It's so funny.
It's so cute.
They're asking her if she wants a husband, and she's like, yeah, I think so, especially one with such beautiful long eyebrows. And the whole time he's been thinking in his head about how he doesn't want to comment on her eyebrows because that would be inappropriate and rude. And it's just like, ooh, that's a little spicy there. He's going like, Loyal is going to have a fun marriage, let's put it that way. Like, he's going to discover some things about himself and about his wife.
I also love the actual like gender dynamic flip of how like Loyal and Elder Hammond are both blushing and think it's inappropriate, while Aerith and Covril both think it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that just, like the way that the matriarchy is really kind of oppressive to Ogier men, just like that felt really appropriate. That like it's okay for the dominant gender to make those jokes even while the submissive gender is like uncomfortable. Like that feels on brand.
There is a certain amount of flipping the gender stereotypes here with the Ogier, like 100%, right? Instead of equalizing them, he's flipped them in some ways, right? This whole, like, men have zero say in who they marry whatsoever, and they're the blushing brides, basically.
Yeah, he's playing with that in a way that feels a little more believable than some of his other attempts. Some of the other attempts he's got at flipping that don't work so well, or creating equality or creating inversions don't work so well. This one feels a little more believable. And if you want to hear a whole bunch more of opinions on that, you should listen to season 1 of the Hot Nuance Book Club, where we discuss the Ruins of Ombre and how all of that did or didn't land for us. And I get to talk with very smart people who know more about these things and learn a lot more about that. But I noticed it here in part because of the discussions we had on Hot Nuance, because it's just like, this actually feels believable in a way that a lot of Robert Jordan's other flips don't.
Yeah, I like it. And I find the wedding very romantic.
It's so cute. So you want to get into it? You want to talk about all the ooey gooey Ogier romance stuff?
I guess I'm not really sure. Other than just reading it, I'm not really sure what else to do with it other than to be like, oh, they're just being really cute.
Well, you're the one getting married, so I'll let you steer the section.
I did. I highlighted this and sent it to Never, and I was like, I want to use some of this. I was thinking, like, to treasure, esteem, and love him so long as he lives, to care for him and tend to him, to guide his path, his feet on the path they should follow. I think that's a good thing to use inside a wedding vow. I think you can adapt
very
that.
Cute.
Yeah. Probably not the son of and vow under the light and by the tree.
That's a little specific, yeah. And like the guiding his feet on the path they should follow is like in world is kind of like but like in context of you and Never is like, all right, fine. I'll allow it.
I might use it. We'll see. I'll talk to her about it. I have not yet, but I think that would be fun to use because, I mean, we've got, of course, a Wheel of Time fan reading the vows.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And me, and she loves Loyal, and she knows how much I.
Yeah, no, treasure, esteem, and love is a really nice set of words.
And it's just a nice vow. It's just, I like the vow. Like,
it's nice. It's nice. It's not too much on a pedestal, but it's enough on a pedestal to be like, no, this is that one special relationship,
And how often do we actually get the marriage ceremony? Like, I don't think we don't get Nynaeve and Lan's marriage ceremony.
Nope, we only have Perrin and Fail in book 4.
Right.
As far as I know, there's basically no other weddings of major characters that occur. Well, no, I mean, Matt and Tuon. But that's not a wedding ceremony in any sense of the word.
No, she's my bloody wife. Yeah.
There's those Aiel that get married, but that's all off screen.
Yeah, just a lot of off-screen marriages, right? Like Llewellyn and Bael Domon get married off screen.
Oh yeah, Morghese and Talonvor do get married on screen, but everybody hated that, so that doesn't count.
No, that sucks. Yeah, no, I mean, this to me is like the best marriage ceremony in the Wheel of Time. for a book about bringing men and women together, there really should be more ceremonial bringing men and women together in the books.
There was that one time in book 3 when Rand had a whole village marrying itself. Okay, that's balanced it out on average.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's this and Shadow Rising that are the two really beautiful wedding ceremonies that we get for the whole series.
And then I love how at the end, the first thing she says to him is, "You're very handsome. I think your mustaches will be beautiful on you. A beard too." And his mother says, "Nonsense." And that changes the dynamic immediately. Immediately. For a moment, he thought Aerith's ears began to slant back. That had to be his imagination.
It's the best! It's the best!
Oh, Aerith turning on Loyal's mother, being like, "You married him to me. He's mine now. Back the fuck off."
So good.
This whole thing about whether or not he gets to speak at the stump. Aerith, he's married. All married men have the ability to speak at the stump. I don't give a shit what you think.
Right, and Loyal's like, well, my mom surely expected to lose total control of me the second I got married. She knew that was coming. And it's like, Loyal, have you met people?
People don't give up power.
You've met enough people by now. You should know that was never going to be that simple.
No, you were always going to have to take that. And thank God Aerith does take it.
The way that she goes from from looking at her new husband to just ears back, like glaring daggers at her mother-in-law. Like, I have traveled with you for 6 fucking months. If you think I am going to let you harm one hair on my precious husband's head, you have another thing coming, Mom. Because, like, she knows Kovriel. They have been traveling together. She knows this woman. She knows how browbeaten Loyal must be. Like,
And the thing is, I think Aerith has been masking this whole, like, covering up her real personality this whole time, right? Because she knows the second she's married, she's on equal footing.
oh, totally. She's a smart cookie.
She's been manipulating the fuck out of this woman who Loyal's mother, who's all of a sudden realizing, oh no, this is not the easily manipulatable pawn that I thought I was going to marry to my son so that I could continue to control his life. This is a woman of equal standing and power and shit.
Yeah, because Loyal says that Aerith is wonderful to talk to. Well, mostly she listens, and it's like, oh, dude, that's such a red flag. And then he says, but when she does speak, she makes very cogent points. And it's like, so she does talk. She does put things together. She is very much keeping up with you. She just likes the sound of your voice and lets you talk. That's what's happening. Like... And yeah, I could totally see her doing a Sylvaise, just being like, yes, Kovriel, whatever you say, Kovriel, whatever you need to hear to give me access to your sweet, brilliant son that you have locked away.
Yep. and then once that paper is signed, once the deed is done, she wastes no time.
Those ears go back. I always imagine her like a cat, just like the way that cat ears just like flatten back. And it's like, oh no, I have unleashed hell on earth.
Well, because, yeah, I mean, they're cats, right?
Literally. They are the best. They are the best of all things. Cats and books put together. And trees.
I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be shocked if Jordan had given them 6 fingers.
Oh my God, can you even imagine 6 fingers and 6 toes? Oh my God, that would have been so cool.
To match the cats in the 2 rivers?
Amazing.
Yeah. And then they nose kiss, and he almost goes a little too far. He's like kissing her nose, and barely had the presence of mind not to finger her ear.
Tufted ears. Yeah, fingering the ear is like, Jordan, you did not need to pick those words.
No, that's a little...
Robert Jordan likes the word fingering and fingered way.
Yeah. And you notice how he fingers her ear, she tugs the tufts on his ear.
Jordan?
So it's not she doesn't finger his ear. She tugs it. I think we know what we're talking about here, and it's not ears.
No, it's no more ears than it is about eyes. Robert! But it is very cute. You know, just the teenagers making out in the corner at the dance, and just like their clothes are coming off. Like, it's just like...
just like, what are you grabbing over there? Stop it.
Yeah. But, you know, it's a very long delayed contact. They have been having this unrequited like chase scenario for their entire relationship, basically. So this is a very sweetly anticipated moment.
The ultimate long distance relationship.
Yes. I love the tufted ears picture, the links with tufted ears picture that has been put in chat. That is a very good expression of tufted ears on a cat. There you go. Kitty, tufted ears. That is a major danger kitty, but it is the correct ears.
So they're talking about leaving to go back to the steading, and which is what her goal was, which is basically to argue about the Book of Translation. I think we've talked about that
but we haven't talked about the part where Loyal jerked direct. Robert Jordan did this to himself. He literally does.
Oh. Wait, they can't do that, not now.
No.
Loyal's quote. Oh, thanks for that laugh. That was
sorry
that
to
was
everyone
good.
who was in a not safe for work context.
Putting that right after he's kissing his wife is just a little too on the nose, and I do mean that in this context.
Good God.
And so, but okay, then let's talk a little bit about his mother's argument. Basically, we must leave this world eventually so we can come to it when the world turns, right? So this idea that eventually the Book of Translation must be open so that they can come back. Because coming back is an important event, apparently. Even though we have no history on them coming back or them leaving.
It seems to be the same logic that Herod Fell uses to say that at some point the bore will be not just patched but repaired.
Right.
It's the same logic of like, in order to be broken, it must be whole at some point, which means it will become whole again somehow. It seems like they're using the same logic. Well, we aren't from here, which means we came here, which means we have to be not here in order to come here. And I feel like that's a really weak argument to be running away from Ragnarok.
Right. And later we'll talk about his argument too, where he's like nowhere safe, basically, is his argument.
Yeah, her argument is pretty unsound, but it is a reasonable place to start the discussion.
And remember, she doesn't believe her argument, right? She thinks they should stay. She is basically playing a literal devil's advocate and saying, listen, somebody's got to argue the other side. If we're literally going to stay and fight the last battle, we need to have the best argument for leaving on the other side.
You know, handling the opposition to the stance you want is an interesting stance to take. Like, I know that I want the other thing, so I need to control the narrative that's going against the one that I want to win. That's a level of 4D chess that feels very Ogier.
Right? And that's why those stumps take forever.
I don't think I could do that, but it feels... Yes, this feels very much like why Ogier need to live so long.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that is something... I don't know if that's maybe a bit of a Sanderson retcon, because that's like not in this book. That's later once they make the decision to stay, I think. Or is it in this book?
It's in this book that he spins his first idea and his mother says, that's not bad. That happens in this chapter.
Okay. Yeah.
She says, not
that's
bad.
True.
Like, so I don't think that you are... I don't remember if she has her mind changed or if she always wanted to stay, but I think that that's entirely possible given my lack of remembering.
Because here, like, you know, obviously Elder Hammond thinks that, like, she wants to go. Because he says, you know, she may even get her decision in months, as she says.
Because she is representing the side of fear, and Ogier are not that different from humans. Fear is going to be their strongest motivation, right? Because they're people too.
Yep. And so then we have this sort of thing where they talk about how he's a good writer, but not very good at speaking in front of people. And we know, like, okay, that might have been the child Loyal, but he's gone through a few things since then. And he's probably going to be a lot better at speaking in front of people. I don't think that's...
He also has the self-reflection that, in truth, he had to admit that sometimes he rambled with only a few listeners.
Yes.
He tended to forget what he intended to say and go off on tangents. And it's like, but we love tangents, Loyal. Tangents are like what we do.
Yes, we love your tangents, Robert Jordan. I mean, Loyal. Because, again, this is very much author insert of the more people are listening, the more we like the tangents. And, like, there's a reason why we call all of our in-between episodes tangents of whatever, right? Because, like... there are a lot of tangents.
Yeah, it just, I feel very represented when I saw the word tangents here. I'm like, yeah, that's right. We name every in-between episode tangents. That's right.
Honestly, if we ever, like, start another podcast, we should just call it, you know, like, tangents. And just, we can talk about whatever we wanted on that podcast and just, like, until we found our footing. Footing?
I'm sure that already exists. That has to already exist. There has to be so many podcasts called Tangents out there. I'm just sure of it.
Anyway.
So, yeah, Loyal gets presented with the question of, well, what would you say? And he's like, there's people looking at me. I'm going to go look out the window, which is relatable.
Yeah, and so he's speaking looking out the window in order to, like, fool his brain into thinking he's just talking to nobody.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I get very distracted by looking at whoever I'm talking to on Zoom. So I tend to not look at them while I'm talking. So that way I can attempt to get to the point that I was trying to make in the first place.
And then we get this just really excellent argument from him, basically saying the shadow must be fought. When it is the shadow that must be fought, our axes have always grown long handles. Perhaps in a year or 5 or 10, we will open the book of translation. But if we do it now, we cannot run away with any real hope of safety. Tarmangaiden is coming, and on that hangs the fate of not only this world, but of any world we might flee to. When fire threatens the trees, we do not run away and hope the flames will not follow us. We fight. Now the shadow is coming like wildfire, and we dare not run from it.
Standing ovation. Correct response.
Right? And also the timing of the shadow is coming and we dare not flare for it. Something was moving among the trees.
And then there's that.
And then there's, yeah.
Like quite literally.
Quite literally, the shadow is coming in a big wall, and no, you better fight it. Yeah, no, it's... that sort of speech leads directly into the attack.
Right. And just before that speech, he has this thought that I highlighted about he was not brave, but he had learned about bravery from watching humans, watching them hang on no matter how strong the winds grew, fight when they had no hope, fight and win because they fought with desperate courage. And then it immediately rolls into him going, you know, hand to hand with a wall of Trollocs, with his new wife behind him and his teacher at his side and his mother in the house. It's just like, yeah, Loyal, you're not brave at all. You and Nynaeve can go sit in the coward's corner. Like...
yeah, right. With Matt, right? Like...
yeah. For sure.
Well, all of you who have absolutely run away from all the pain and suffering every single time you've seen it and never stood up to the bullies. Yeah. No, it's clear he models it, but at the same time, sometimes you have to see, you know, you can learn something from somebody who learned it by watching you. Mm-hmm. Because you do it instinctively. And we see that with channeling, right? Where, you know, sometimes some of our characters have done something, channeled something. They don't remember it, but someone else saw them, learned how to do it, and later taught them the weave that they themselves came up with.
Egwene and Elaine have that experience, yeah.
And so, yeah, I think, you know, you're seeing something here similar with courage, right? Where Loyal models the courage to the people around him. They step up and act in courage, and he goes, "Oh, that's what courage is." Okay, you know, and then learns what he does instinctively.
Right. But especially because for him, things that are not extremely dangerous would be for humans. So he can step up and do things that are less dangerous to him, and everyone's like, wow, he's so brave, we're gonna, you know, do that too. And it's like, but he literally was risking less but the feedback loop works anyway because he's twice as tall and twice as heavy, right? Like it's just like he's a sturdier person, so he can like move things and run distances.
And there does seem to be some implication that Ogier's skin is also very tough, right? Like tree bark.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems almost like they toughen up in response to going into war mode.
Right? Yeah, like there's some sort of, or maybe they are usually singing, so maybe there's some magic in the singing that like helps, like they grow, like there's some sort of
full body glove.
They have the ability to grow things when they sing, so maybe they grow some sort of armor or make their skin tougher when they're in battle with the singing.
I like that. There's a war song that gives them a +2 to their armor class.
The true benefit of having bards. I mean, party.
Bardic barbarians. That's basically what they are.
Bardic barbarian.
They go into a rage
Do you know the song?
And start singing at the same time.
I imagine the song is just like
death
metal.
Definitely.
Do you know the song?
Absolutely. I need Ogier doing just like head banging and like that their heads are smashing into trolls and just like right. When the mosh pit goes deadly. All right, so Loyal spots that there are Trollocs in the woods, and then they're like, all right, let's grab our weapons that were Chekhov's gunning in this room. Let's lay our ears back, and let's start yelling this Ogier battle cry. And it's a fantastic final few paragraphs of this POV.
Up axes and clear the field, Trollocs coming! Like, I just love the way they yell that. The way, again, Kramer does a great job with that.
So good. So
good.
Good.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, just the excitement and the panic and the just like, oh my god, this is a crazy army approaching.
Yeah, and all 4 of them grab weapons, right? There's weapons there for 4. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the men take the axes, the women take the pruning shears, and Aerith gives us everyone's favorite romantic line that Robert Jordan has ever written. If you get yourself killed, I will kill you.
Yeah, I will be very angry with you.
I will be so angry. It's so Ogier, but it's like women, right? This is RJ's characterization of women and relationships. That's just
Nynaeve has said it. Yeah.
Min has said it. I believe Elaine has said it. Like it is iterated and iterated and iterated, and I don't hate it. I think it's cute. It's really every time I'm like, you know what? I'll let it pass, even if it is an RJism. It's very cute.
But I've heard other people say it too. You know, if you go like you know, drive I think my mom said, if you go drive recklessly and, you know, or drive drunk and die, I'll kill you, you know, stuff like that. Like, I don't know, just, I feel like that's something that people in real life say.
I use it for sure. You know, I threaten violence in disproportionate response to various events all the time. Like, it's very much, but I think I picked it up from Wheel of Time. So, you know.
Right. I never know. I just assume I get it from the Wheel of Time. I'm like, isn't this from the Wheel of Time? People are like, no. I think it's the,
Jesus is saying it's very 80s girls coded.
It's the Fortnite phenomenon, right? Fortnite, I don't know how much you know about Fortnite.
That it exists.
Pretty much, I know just slightly more, but I know that it borrows from all these other. I know it exists mostly because like Sanderson put fucking Kelsier, one of his characters, in it from Mistborn, right? Like, so it's a book connection. So basically, they take skins of every character they can and put it in their game, and they all fight, right? Like, and they all do funny dances and stuff like that. And so there's a bunch of kids who grew up playing Fortnite, not realizing the references that all these characters come from. So the joke is, oh, isn't that character from Fortnite? And it's like, no, none of the characters are from Fortnite. They're from something else. And so for me, it's very similar with Wheel of Time. I'm like, oh, isn't that trope from Wheel of Time? And it's like, no, Wheel of Time is borrowed from so many genres that nothing's from the Wheel of Time. It's all got a similar origin.
Yeah.
You know, it's all borrowed from Greek mythology and Roman mythology and modern stories, and there's just so much in there that's in the Bible and and the mythology, right? Yeah,
Norse mythology, Hindu mythology, Semitic mythology,
and then since all our stories are then based on those mythologies in some way or another, right? Like all of our stories are in some way related to the Wheel of Time, and there's so much of the rest of our, and there's so much of Marvel Cinematic Universe in the Wheel of Time, which is just crazy, but it's there.
I mean, it's less Marvel Cinematic Universe and more the Norse mythology, the MCU is pillaging. But yeah.
Exactly, right. But that Wheel of Time has also pillaged, right? They're pillaging from the same sources.
And that they're all pillaging also from Tolkien, who pillaged from that also.
Yes.
So,
exactly.
you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like how they've done genetic studies now that have proven that the way that Neanderthal DNA part of how Neanderthal DNA got back into modern Homo sapiens was by people going down through humans going back down across from Spain to North Africa and going back down into Africa. So there actually is Neanderthal DNA in the modern human genome of Africans, but it's not it's not in the same way as with Europeans, where like they went in and like just interbred with some of those people, interbred with them, and then went on to travel to back into Africa. And so like it's just genetics is very, very wonky. And so is this.
Mm-hmm.
Myths are even more pliable than genes.
Yeah. And Super Sky like tells an interesting story. He's like, where does the first is asking an interesting question. Where do the first stories come from? And it's really like you had this tradition of verbal storytelling, and how much of that is like, what is the point of Wheel of Time? It's talk about how myths and rumors spread and change and become interesting, embellished stories. And that I'm guessing our first myths and mythologies, right, were a legitimate story where you have 4 or 5 interesting stories that have been embellished and mixed together to become these mythologies that people then built upon and became part of cultures. Right. And then when they started getting written down, that's how we got our mythologies that everything else is based on.
Right. I mean, even like the Homeric myths, like it's well established that like those were an ever evolving living oral tradition. And Homer is just the name that they attached to the version that they wrote down. Right. Like, but it was a living oral tradition for centuries before that. And it's much like the Hindu religion is now. Like people are constantly telling the mythologies and stories and adding their own embellishments because it's just this giant pantheon and it's a living, breathing religion. People are living it out. And yeah, one assumes that people have always been like this, right? Before we got the weird Christianity thing, like messing with all of our brains. Like we've always been doing this. So yeah, like trying to wind that clock back and be like, where did it start? When did it start? Is there an story or an muse for all of this? Like, is it all personifications of nature? Is it all myths about where we came from? Is it all cosmology? Like,
it's gossip. It's all gossip. Like that's where these stories, it's just gossip that evolved into stories, evolved into bragging and storytelling, right? Like we love to tell stories about people, and then, you know, well, I know that story's not actually about my neighbor Bob. He couldn't have actually flown to the sun, so I'll make up Bobbera and call it a god, you know, and you know, like it's just like it's really, really easy to see how gossip and stories become myths and legends, and I you know can't read the Wheel of Time without being like, that's what the intro paragraph is fucking saying,
right? To say nothing of the number of times that people have gotten high as balls and figured that the gods were talking to them because, you know, high as balls.
Well, sure. Yeah.
That happens. Or you're suffering famine or heat stroke or any number of other things that put you into an altered state.
And I do feel like that also, it all comes back around too when you talk about what was Robert Jordan's upbringing. Well, he talks about how his family was a family of verbal storytellers. They sat around on porches and made up stories and told stories and mixed stories together and tried to one-up each other and created these universes. And it was all this verbal storytelling that to me is a very traditional way of entertaining yourselves. And the Wheel of Time comes directly from that verbal storytelling that Jordan was doing with his family.
Absolutely. And it is one of my apocalypse plans, is I will be able to tell the story of the Wheel of Time to keep us entertained during the long winters, and it will be how I earn my keep in the clan.
I mean, if you've ever read Fahrenheit 451...
Oh, yeah.
A spoiler for the end of the book, just in case you haven't read Fahrenheit 451, it's all about the fact that he memorizes a book and takes it with him into the wilderness, and he becomes a physical embodiment of that book. And so that when books become legal again, he can either pass it on or write it down, and so that it enters back into the public consciousness, and that book isn't lost, right? And so, of course, what does everyone do as soon as they finish that? Is they go, "What book would I memorize in the apocalypse or in Fahrenheit 451 if I had to save it?" And of course, it was Wheel of Time for me.
Yeah, and I'm like, I mean, 15 books is a lot, but I've listened to the audiobooks a lot of times. Like, I got most of it.
I feel like we could reconstruct an awful lot of it. It might have to, come in pieces, and there might be chunks that are missing, right? There might be some boring stuff in Crossroads of Twilight.
Yeah, and then there was circus shenanigans.
Anyway. But, yeah. So much of the quotes I bet we could pull out.
So many.
Get right.
So many. Yeah. POV switch?
Before the POV switch happens, I feel like this is a good time to talk about who is sending the Trollocs.
Okay.
Where have they come from?
Enlighten me.
I'm asked, do you have any idea?
No.
Okay.
I just like Trollocs because plot reasons. I'm a bad reader. I'm a hack and a fraud.
You didn't even ask why these Trollocs were showing up or who sent them or...
Mostly, I assumed you were going to tell me.
Oh, that's...
What do we pay you for?
So, why exactly? Okay. So, an order was issued by Samael or someone who looked like him, who was also marked as chosen. Right, so this is something revealed later at the gardens in that chapter when the Forsaken are having a meeting. So we find out the person who gave this order and sent all of these Trollocs and Myrddraal through the ways to get here had the mark of the chosen. So that narrows it down, and it's obviously not Samael because he's fucking toast, right? He's dead as doornails, right? He's been dead for quite some time. So it's someone not Samael who's have the mark of the chosen, which gives a fairly narrow cluster of people. And the most widely popular theory seems to be that it's someone who's very frustrated they didn't know where Rand was in the previous chapter. So if you go back in the previous chapter, Logain shows up and goes, "Man, Taim was really pissed off I wouldn't tell him where you were. He's trying really, really hard to find out where you are." Also, he had just sent Ashaman, right? Really, that's Path of Daggers is just, a couple of weeks ago. He had just sent Ashaman to kill Rand, right? Taim is trying to kill Rand. Taim is looking for Rand to kill him, right? And Taim has most likely been elevated to Forsaken at this point in the story.
I was totally thinking that Taim made the most sense too, because Samael is an empty slot to fill, and Taim has not been revealed as chosen yet, so going under the guise of a Forsaken who can't show up and blow your alibi is a great way to get nefarious shit done while still holding that reveal in reserve.
And also, it's very Taim to just throw an army of... I have access to an army of Trollocs. I'm going to use them against a bunch of channelers.
Very in character.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think the point that if Logain hadn't shown up in time, he may have succeeded, right? Because he wasn't expecting Logain to be there.
No, because Logain was claiming not to know where he was. Yeah, it's a very lucky break for Rand and Logain both that this went the way it did.
So, I do think Taim is the one who sent this group, and I'm willing to entertain other theories, but because I don't think there's a lot of direct evidence, it's all incidental.
Yeah, I don't really have any other candidates. I thought Taim was a really solid bet, just casually off the cuff. I guess it could have been Demon Dread. Maybe, but I feel like Taim is the best candidate because none of the others would think to debase themselves by pretending to be Samael, the short, ridiculous person. So, but Taim trying to prove himself worthy of this newly bestowed title could, can you act in a chosen's place to a chosen scale and make a believable chosen act of destruction? Maybe then I'll allow you to reveal your new rank.
And I don't believe it's either the two mind-trapped women because they couldn't work without
No.
Yeah, so the number of candidates is very small.
Yeah, and I also feel like Myrddraal can tell the difference between Saidar and Saidin, so it would be very hard to pass yourself off as the wrong gendered one. Like, they'd be like, why are you channeling Saidar if you're Samael? That makes no sense.
Right. So it seems like it should be one of the men anyway to begin with, right? And it's not.
And I don't think Helena's got the time or the brain to do that.
No, she does. She's hanging out with Grendel, so nothing that Grendel does. I Taim seems like the most likely candidate by far, and Demandred is a certain possibility, but just because we never fucking find out what Demandred's doing this whole time, I assume right now he's off, fighting a dragon.
Yeah, he's having his River of Souls moment.
So he can be the dragon slayer, right? Yeah, so he's doing River of Souls right now, so we have to assume he's not involved in much that's going on, except for like the meetings.
Yeah, agreed.
So I will take care of Tyr Logan, while you... Abruptly, Rand wrinkled his nose. It was not that he actually smelled a rotting midden heap suddenly, but he felt as if he did, and the feeling was getting stronger. Shadow Spawn, Codswain said quietly, putting down her embroidery and rising. His skin tingled as she embraced the source. Or maybe it was Olivia, walking briskly towards the window after the Green Sister. Min stood, drawing a pair of throwing knives from her coat sleeves. At the same instant, through the thick walls, he faintly heard the Ogier shouting. There was no mistaking those deep, drum-like voices. "Trollocs coming! Up axes and clear the field!"
I love that transition. It's a really good... It's right at the same moment, but because we're switching characters, it's nice to have that yelling time sync the two, to be like, no, we are literally... The camera is just flipping from one to the other in the same moment. I enjoy it a lot. And it really sets you up to feel the excitement of the second half of this chapter.
Totally. And Codswain, obviously sensing Shadow Spawn, probably because of her Terangrial.
No, Rand smells filth, so it's just the channeling sensitivity.
Okay. You think it's just all the channelers are sensing it, and all the warders too, yeah.
They all come into rage at the same time. Right, because it's just a wall of Trollocs walking forward. So all of the channelers pinged at the same moment.
Mm-hmm. Thousands of Trollocs, 30 or 40 Murdral.
Yeah, that Rand can see on this side of the house. So he's like, if this is that on every side, that's a lot.
That Rand can see, right. So my guess would be an even 100. And they had to have gotten there through the ways, which I'm guessing probably... for a while, the ways were pretty hard for the Shadow Spawn to get through in numbers quickly because of the way Mashadar, thank you.
Machin Shin.
No.
God damn it.
Machin Shin, thank you. All right. From the way... Jordan, you do not make this easy sometimes. From the way Machin Shin has reacted in the ways has changed, right? Because now it's kind of chasing Rand, but then I'm wondering why wouldn't it have been at the way gate closest to Rand?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. It feels like maybe they're just pouring Trollocs into the numbers game and hoping that Machin Shin can't eat them all. Maybe?
Yeah. But, I mean, this is... You think this would be severely punished, right? Because they're trying to build these Trollocs and Murderall up for the last battle. Now is not the time to waste a bunch of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems bad. Maybe they just figured out a safe passage somehow. Or Machin Shin is off doing something else because it's been infected with Fane at this point, right? So it's confusing. Oh, newsflash. Aerith's eyes are green because there is now a picture of silverbell tree seed pods in chat that is very much green. That is not silver. I see no silver and no bells. These are kind of bell-shaped, but they're not silver.
I bet they're silver when they're... young.
Like the flowers are actually silver?
The flowers are silver, or maybe when the pods are very small, they don't have much color to them because a lot of things go from white to green to red. It's the seed pods. It looks like the flowers are white.
Oh yeah, now there's a picture of the flower, and it's a very white pink. I could totally see the original beginning of the seed being very silvery. Well, Loyal, you're gonna need to be more specific. No, he said a ripe silverbell seed pod, so I guess we're gonna have to go with green. She's got green eyes because she's a tree girl.
See, when I asked the question, it wasn't as dumb as I thought it was it? When you said silver, and I was like, oh, I guess that's obvious because silver's in the name.
No, this is me again being like, well, if the obvious things are supposed to be obvious, then I should do the obvious thing. No, this was the wrong time to do the obvious thing. This is why I'm autistic. This is how I know I'm autistic.
And me agreeing with you,
I never do
right?
the right thing. I always pick the wrong thing every goddamn time.
Why would the silver things be silver? I don't understand.
Are words supposed to mean things or not?
Only if you want to follow the rules. Rule follower.
Yeah, like constitutionally incapable of not following the rules. It's like so bad.
It gets me in trouble too. Yeah, that is something I've noticed. Is I have a hard time knowing which rules are supposed to be broken.
Exactly. How am I supposed to know? Whenever I just break a rule, no, not that one. That wasn't one of the ones that was breakable. You should have known better. But then if I rigorously adhere to a rule, turns out that was the one rule that everyone knows to break automatically.
Speeding is my favorite example of that. Because I got so many speeding tickets that I've had to slow down to drive the speed limit, but now everybody's angry at me. And it's like, well, how do I not, I'm breaking the rule, either you're mad at me or I'm getting speeding tickets. I don't know how to.
You have to know to break the speed limit by 5 miles per hour exactly.
But not in these certain areas.
Yeah. And not in these certain zones at these certain times.
But at other times, 5 miles an hour isn't enough, right? You need to break it by 10 or 15 in order to keep, or else people are going to be mad at you.
It's great. It's great. It's great.
And apparently how nice your car is also. You can drive faster if you have a nicer car. That's the other thing I've observed. Yeah, you're supposed to.
No, I mean, everywhere in our justice system is pay to play, but no more is it more obvious than in car speeding fee type things. It is a pay to play system.
And speeding
that's
tickets.
Just what it is. If it was scaled to your income, rich people would drive very differently.
$200 for someone who makes, minimum wage is a lot of money. $200 to someone who is a millionaire is nothing.
Yeah. There are people in my family who have gleefully taken advantage of that fact. And it is frustrating for the people in my family who are not millionaires to look at that and be like, you're an asshole. That's just what you're doing.
I remember, I think Steve Jobs was still well known for like parking in handicap spots and being like, I pay the ticket. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it should be a percentage of your income, scaled to how much your worth is. So that way everyone feels the same amount of gut sinking when they see those stupid lights come on. Yeah, thank you, Fuji. Finland knows what the fuck is up. Finland does that. Thank you. Well, yeah, of course it would be too fair for America. But yeah, Finland knows what the fuck is up. As per usual, Scandinavia has a much better idea of what to do.
So back to the battle. They come running in, and we immediately get lightning and fountains of flames.
Very
right?
Dumais Wells.
Very Dumais Wells, right? Like this is, but I think what we're realizing is that fountains of flames and lightning are not the most energy efficient way to kill Trollocs. They're really not. That's a lot of energy, and a lightning strike might kill 1 to 5 Trollocs around it. Like, it's not a big radius.
It's very medieval, just like lighting pots of oil on fire and then slingshotting them into the army. Like, it's bad, but it's a lot of work for you.
And I think what makes this chapter so cool is that it's the first time where we see these characters go from, I'm going to throw flames at you and power at you, to I'm going to create really interesting ways to just kill you and dispose of your body while I'm at it.
I fucking love the Death Gate so much.
Honestly, what I love more is the, what are they, the columns? The Blossoms of Fire. I think those are the coolest. Like, Death Gates are cool, yes, but I think Blossoms of Fire are actually a much more interesting and effective use of the one power.
Yeah, Robert Jordan really got creative with this one and was like, let me pull out all my Age of Legends style stops and just give you a fantastic looking battle.
So let's talk about the weaves. We can go back to some of the other stuff, but let's talk about the weaves that he uses, right? So Blossoms of Fire, they're vertical red shafts, 10 feet tall and thinner than your forearm. So, I don't know, like basically like a lamp pole, or like a stop sign pole, right?
Yeah.
Kind of about that, like that pole. It's about that height, about
yeah.
that big around, right? And they do a shrill whine, and then each red shaft expanded in a heartbeat to a disc of flame 30 feet across. I would assume about at neck height, right? Because heads end up pinwheeling through the air, and this idea that you take something long and tall and squish it and like basically build up the power and squish it down.
That's what happens.
And that squishing creates a flat disc. And that disc then basically slices off everybody's heads. And what you're doing is creating this vertical shaft that you can then squish, and you're creating this like tension that you can then essentially release in a flash and an explosion. Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool. I did not really mentally envision that. I thought like the whole column was expanding. I didn't get that the verticality was vanishing and it was pancaking itself. That makes so much more sense. Oh, I really like that looks very cool in my mind's eye.
Yeah, that it's creating this vertical, basically it's shrinking, you're doing...
And it blossoms. It's a blossom,
right?
Because it probably starts to expand as the thing is going down into it. So seen from above, it looks like really cool, like darker in the middle and expanding on the... Yeah.
You have this circular disc with a shaft sticking out the center of it. It probably looks like a little flower.
Yeah, well, a big flower. But yeah, I'm glad to have that mental picture now. That looks very cool. And the shrill whine sound, it makes me think of like World War I, like airplane aerial bombing like that, or even World War II. Like there's just the
whistle,
like that scary like whistle sound. I don't know. I want to think that it's something like that, where it's like it just stirs something deep in your psyche where you're like, that's wrong. That's deeply wrong. That should not be happening. That's a sound of bad things coming.
I feel like in Hollywood you hear it a lot with the future grenades where they throw it and you hear go,
yeah, totally.
And then because they want to give you that clue that it's winding up to explode. That I don't think real grenades have.
No.
But like I do feel like it's a sound effect you hear a lot in TV shows where like
there's a lot of audio conceits in TV shows that I have to forgive. Film in general, TV shows and movies.
Oh, okay. So someone is, Lil Jen is bringing up a dreidel. And I like the idea that basically what you have is a bunch of fire threads in a column spinning incredibly fast. And what you're hearing is them literally spinning up. And then something is released, and the centrifugal force of them spinning essentially flings them out into a horizontal ring of flame. And it's actually that force, that shrill whine is created by the spinning force, and then that spinning force is what creates the disc that is the flattening.
Well, I was also thinking, like, as the disc is forming, you've got a pole on either side of it, so it is kind of like a top, really, because it's at 10 feet.
Yeah, totally.
Or the thing is 10 feet tall, and the thing comes out, about head height, which is, I guess, on Trollocs about 10 feet tall. So that would be at the top.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be on the other side.
Well, if they spin, if it's in the middle, right?
Oh, but
if
it's not
the thing's 10
touching
feet
the
tall,
ground.
and Trollocs are...
Is it touching the ground?
Sure, but it's going to be 5-6 feet off the ground in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's about where the Trolloc, the Trolloc head is above that.
But I definitely, like, spinning definitely seems logical to me for that, like, outward explosion of energy, like the conservation of rotation kind of thing. Like, yeah.
Exactly.
I was also thinking it sounds a lot like a star going nova. The way that, like, there's a really rapid expansion and release of energy at a certain point in the nova cycle with stars. Obviously, they shed their shells in all directions, but also they do kind of have, the poles. I mean, neutron stars, like, have the poles poking out of them, and the jets, I mean.
Here's a little child's toy I'm going to put a picture of in chat. Let me see where I can grab that. Test. This is what it kind of reminds me of. I don't know if you ever played with this toy as a kid, but it's something where you push in the top and it's got a little spiral, and that makes it spin really fast. And that pushing down on the top.
That's how my salad spinner works.
Yeah. That's basically what he's making is salad spinners here, except he's spinning out like blossom, like threads of flame,
and then exploding heads with it.
Yes.
I love that. He's salad spinning their heads off. Trollocs 100 paces and more away from the explosions go down, and not all of them get up. This is a much more efficient use of explosive weaves than just like throwing a flaming pot of oil. This is throwing an actual like grenade.
And then there's a shockwave that goes out right from this. That's the other thing we haven't talked about is like this thing explodes out, and then there's a shockwave that goes out, and yeah, you end up with a 10-foot or 30-foot disc of flame, but then you also end up with 100-foot.
Right, because that displacement of air has to go somewhere, right? Like you're very rapidly moving that air out of the way. So yeah, you're going to have some near speed of sound sort of booms happening.
So then you've got the gateway, right? Death gates. The death gates that we always need. Death gates.
Death gates! I've been screaming about death gates in the server all day.
Spirit touch with fire, which is the weave for a gateway. So he makes a normal gateway, but then he adds touches of earth. Now, the earth has got to be two things. One, it's got to help it move across the ground somehow, right? That's what I imagine that does.
Definitely.
And then something about them opening and shutting continuously, I think, is the earth does that as well. That there's this like this movement where they're... Okay, here's what it reminds me of. Again, physics talk, right? It reminds me of the way an electromagnetic wave moves across space. Because it's a sine wave in two directions. And so you have this thing that's fluctuating in and out, right? Opening and closing and traveling forward in a space. And so I imagine it's almost in a lot of ways a very blown up electromagnetic wave that hits them and then like sort of opening and closing. It's, I don't know, just that vision somehow matches up with the gateway, you know. It's a sine wave. Whatever it is, the gateway's opening and closing in a sine wave.
Yeah. I like that. It's like when you see a cool graph in a odd number of dimensions compared to how it was meant to be seen. It's like, oh, that's what that looks like. Stuff that I could not grasp for the sake of getting through my physics homework, but I do get, like, you know, when other people explain it to me, and I've grasped it more over the years, seeing cool animations. It's like, that's what they were saying. God damn it. 8 years later, now I get it.
Now I can figure it out. Yeah, no, a little late, but hey, I mean, but that's the thing about the that kind of education is even if you don't get it then, sometimes it means you can realize it later. And if you didn't have that foundational education, you would have never figured it out later.
It's very true. Yeah, but I love the mechanic of Shadow Spawn can't go through gateways. Therefore, we can just use gateways to carve holes of no more Shadow Spawn through the ranks of the army. And, like, because the gateways open and close, you're not getting a huge pile of dead bodies in any one place. You're just getting, like, 2, 3, 4, 5, some small number. And, yeah, it's going to be weird to deal with. And if that falls right in the middle of your kitchen in the middle of having dinner, that's going to be a really upsetting day for you as a random person. But, like... It's a clever way of just, like, diffusing the power of the army, you know?
What I would have loved to have seen is basically while this is going on, like if this was a movie or a TV show, like this incredible battle cut to a man walking alone on the mountainside. Boom, dead Trolloc body falls in front of him. Totally. What the fuck? Yeah. You know, and then switch to a family eating dinner. Boom, dead Trolloc. You know, it's just like all these scenes of people encountering like one or two dead Trollocs appearing out of nowhere, just being like,
right?
What? Like, where did how?
Causes like a major carriage pile up in the middle of a city or something.
Right, yeah. Just like people go screaming and running, you know?
Yeah. People end up getting killed like in the ensuing stampede, like, but the Trolloc was dead the whole time.
or here's another one. You have that, like, you know, somebody about to get robbed and they're like with a big knife coming out and someone's retreating and, you know, about to stab the helpless girl and the Trolloc falls on the bad guy and she runs away innocent. Yeah, all those sorts of scenes. Like, I'm just imagining all that kind of stuff every time a Deathgate takes a Trolloc or a Murdral.
Yeah, and then one of those random scenes where it's just like a bird, like minding its own business in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. And then just like kaplonk.
Yeah. The Trolloc falls out of the sky.
Exactly. Oh, that'd be funny.
I feel like you could do all the humorous bits with the just random Trollocs. Yeah. A lot of comedy there.
And then we get to one of Lews Therin's best lines.
My hands! Why can't I move my hands? Which is just, I mean, it's such a mind fuck on so many levels, because you realize that Louis Theron sees Rand's body as his.
Yeah.
Which...
Yeah. No, the blurriness between who was Rand and who was Lou's here gets real. At one point, he even thinks Rand was seeking them out. And it's like, I thought Louis was the one who was seeking out them. What? What?
Yeah, Jordan is playing so much with the identity of who is Rand, who is Louis Theron, which one's real, which one's not, you know? And in hindsight, you can see, like, Louis Theron was never real. It's just a voice in Rand's head. Rand's doing all of this.
Yeah, no, and it's like, why is Rand doing this? I don't know. Maybe he's under a little bit of stress or something.
Just a little bit, yeah.
But, like, it's very interesting that Rand, in part of his mind, cares very much about about protecting the Saldeans from the barn fire that gets started, but his actual bodily panic response is to fight with everything he has, even the insane part of his brain, because he will not be taken, you know, like Egwene kind of freak out, because he's been through some shit, and like the only thing he knows how to do is kill, and, like, he's terrified. Because, I mean, Min is in the room behind him. He has to do everything, even embrace the insane part of his brain that is learning Weaves in the Age of Legends somehow.
And we'll get to it, but the only reason he doesn't suicide is because Min's in the room with him.
Yeah, everything is on the edge of a knife, and definitions are very, very fluid. Also, because Min's in the room. So, you know, everything is fluid, because we don't need definitions when Min's in the room.
Don't forget, why is he having this issue where Louis Theron can take the power away from him? It's this dizziness where he's not in his own body, right? He's crossing over with Moradin, and that's still affecting him. Every time he sees power, he gets this double vision with Moradin, and that's really messing with his head and making him have this out-of-body experience. So what happens when you have an out-of-body experience? You kind of let the crazy person in your head take over your body.
Right. And, like, in also fairness, like, Moradin is nihilistic and very much wanting the world to end. And his former iteration was good friends with Luz. Ishamael and Luz were good friends. Like, Luz definitely has an existentialist bone or two in his body. You know, like, he's got some of that nihilistic. He wants to die for more acute, painful reasons than just nihilism. But, like, there's a part of him that definitely, like, hangs out with the emo kids behind the school and smokes cigarettes, right?
Well, and we've talked about how this crossover may be one of the reasons why Rand doesn't react physically to pain as much. And you have to wonder, is there any bleed over with the mental state as well? Is any of Rand's mental state and the nihilism coming from Moradin? Is that mental state bleeding back into Rand in the same way that perhaps Rand's pain is bleeding into Moradin? That if Rand's physical state is going into Moradin, is Moradin's mental state going into Rand?
Right. It's all very, very blurry. But also part of Rand really does want to save the Saldeans, and so he orders Logain to take care of it. Like, he's got like, he's out of body, but also, like, he's a little bit in body. Like, he's having a tough time. And that's why when he's talking to Cadsuane in a minute after the fight's over, and he's like, you can ask me, I'm doing fine. And he isn't lying. Because Rand, the little bubble inside his head where he's retreated to, is fine. He's fine inside the bubble he retreated to. He has all this protective Lews Theron shit out there to deal with the tough stuff. And the Lews Theron is crazy. Rand is fine.
Right.
Which,
Rand
like,
is fine.
I relate to so much.
But here's the thing. Rand is the part of Rand, of the Dragon Reborn, that's fine. Louis Theron is the part of the Dragon Reborn who is not fine.
Exactly.
Rand is getting smaller and smaller and smaller because less and less of Rand is fine. And Louis Theron is becoming more and more of the dominant personality.
Exactly.
I thought it was interesting we get a list of, like, all of the Trolloc bands here in this chapter.
It's a lot of fucking bands, man. There's a lot of bands.
Yeah. The Afrit, the Kobal, the Gremlan, the Argol, the Daimon, and the Knomon, Davol, Gargol, and Dijinen, and then the Banshin, which are, right, just mythical creatures. This is where all of our mythical creatures come from. The kobold, gremlin, ghoul, demon, gnome, devil, gargoyle, djinn, and banshees.
Yeah, I don't know what Afrite is, but I feel like that's the name of like some mythic. It's Middle Eastern, right?
Middle Eastern,
okay,
sort of.
Okay, yeah. So if I know Jinn, I should know. Afrite is another. It's in there somewhere. Like fire genies.
Yeah,
okay.
it's like a fire djinn.
Yeah, so they're all different kind of mythical creatures. Like gnomes, obviously, are not known for being bloodthirsty warriors, but except for in a couple of franchises. But like, it's fun. It's very fun to be like, and gargoyles aren't demons; they're a fucking architectural feature. Like they're not even a mythical creature; they're an architectural, artistic like thing that people did. Like they've never been considered mythical creatures.
Hey, don't say that to my childhood. I used to love gargoyles. That was a great cartoon. They were mythical creatures that came alive. They're from the Scottish Highlands, and they're here to save us.
I have no problem with that headcanon. Carry on.
It was a cartoon. It was great.
I've heard of it. I mostly just associate it with Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is traumatizing. So.
Mm-hmm. So the thing that you have to understand about gargoyles is every single voice in the gargoyles was a cast member of Star Trek.
Wow.
And so it was high quality writing. Like, so if you go listen to it, it's all Patrick Stewart and Kevin Franks, or not Kevin Franks. God, Star Trek people are going to murder me.
All their names.
All the names from Star Trek are in it. And so it's very fun to be like, Jonathan Frakes. Thank you. It's very fun to listen to that and be like, oh yeah, this is like Star Trek people. I also just think it's a very well written story. It's got a lot of cool time travel stuff and character stuff, and I think it holds up.
Nice. All right, so the Trollocs have been battling with the Saldaeans in a hand-to-hand fashion. Buildings are on fire. All the Aes Sedai and Ashaman are firing out of all the windows around the whole house. It's just Dumai's Wells all over again, except it's Trollocs on the other side, so we're not as traumatized.
Yeah, and it's also the inside shooting out as opposed to the outside shooting in, right? Like it's almost a mirror image, almost a one might say flame to the fang of Dumai's Wells. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, the inverse. Yeah, I'll take it.
So we finally we the one we didn't talk about is the one where Louis Theron wants his hands up so he can do
arrows of fire. That's the last weave we've got to talk about. Yes.
Yeah. Which is 10 from each finger, right? So he's shooting 100 darts, essentially 100 flame darts at once. So that's 100 weaves at once.
That's a lot.
For each one of those things, right? So, but they must be incredibly simple, right? I imagine this is just like a very simple, narrow thread. It's kind of lasers. He's shooting lasers out of his fingers.
Yeah, he has
laser
fingers. Yeah.
He has laser fingers.
That's what's happening for sure. Because they're coming out so fast that it looks like they're flickering. It's like, okay, space travel shit. What are you doing in my fantasy plot? He's got lasers.
He's laser fingers. This is essentially him being Han Solo.
But we're skipping inventing guns.
Rand shot first.
We're just, yeah.
Right? Yeah. But he's not shooting one. He's shooting 100 bullets with each shot out of his fingers, which is just insane.
Yeah, and he's just mowing down Trollocs. Just mowing them down. And then a Birdroll comes up in his face, and he points all his fingers together and just like annihilates its head with every single one of those flickers. And he kills it so dead that it doesn't even twitch, which we've never seen a Birdroll go down that hard ever.
Well, when Nynaeve crushed them all to an infinitesimal speck and they vanished.
There was nothing left to twitch. That's different.
Yeah. And then she bale-fired him. No, Nynaeve bale-fired him. I think Egwene... Who do we...
Egwene and Elaine did the crushing and the electrocuting, and then Nynaeve bale-fired it. It was a lot. Right.
It was a lot. It was effective. So that was almost as effective
the
as
three
this.
of them doing shit is almost as effective as Rand with his bare hands. Okay.
This also reminds me a little bit of, again, Robert Jordan with the machine gun in the helicopter, right? Like, this shooting out very small flames of fire, but just mowing people down in an arc as he spreads from one, like slowly going from one side to the other. That to me feels more like a machine gun than it does someone's hands.
Yeah. I would agree with that. He wanted to have Rand actually have an experience of just like being able to fan death out with his hands. Not balefire, but bullets, effectively.
Yeah, effectively machine gunning down a crowd of people. Or Trollocs.
Yeah, just having his Gatling gun in his colonial conflict where nobody on his side dies. Like, yeah.
Perhaps a group of people running at a stronghold out of a forest and then getting mowed down by a machine gun could be something that Robert Jordan is familiar with.
That's
I'm just
way too likely.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying is like this feels like something he has had experienced, or at least heard described experienced.
I mean, it's definitely happened many, many times in many different wars, but yeah, I could totally see it being something he experienced.
And then obviously blossoms of fire, and replace that with grenades people are throwing into a crowd.
Yeah.
Death gates would be booby traps set up along the way. Like, yeah, kind of terrifying.
No, I mean, I'm enjoying reading it, but it is horrifying to think about it, much less its real world inspirations.
Right. That's the thing, is like you read something like this, you're like, oh, fantasy, and you go, oh, not really.
Legends fade to myth, and you can tell that serial numbers have not been filed off completely.
Yeah. So yeah, we talked about him making Logain put out the fires.
Yeah, which Logain does, to his credit. He doesn't waste time asking or posturing or anything. He's just like, for whatever reason, it's my job to save those people. I guess I'll do that because I'm a decent human being who cares about saving other people. Even though he is clearly annoyed by it, and like, later on he's like, why do you keep asking me to do shit that you should be able to do yourself? But like, he's still a human being.
And I love the first thing he turns to Rand and says, why are you hiding those? How did you know how to do this? And why didn't you tell us before? This would have been super effective against Trollocs. And Rand be like, oh, I just thought about it. I didn't know I knew. I just remembered I could do that. Like, but he doesn't want to explain any of that because it's weakness. It's showing how much he's just flying by the seat of his pants. It's not that he wasn't planning and scheming and keeping things away from him because he thought, it's that he didn't remember.
Yeah. This is nothing like Taim carefully doling out information. This is what happens when stuff bleeds through erratically.
Which is, remember, I think there was something where he said, I will never try and hide things from you. I'll teach you anything you want to know. I think there's a moment where he says that to Logain, unless I'm making that up.
I feel like he says something to the effect of, I'm not hiding stuff. It's just,
Right. So I think that's why Logain's so pissed about, like, this particular read being hidden, in quotes.
Right. And it's like, well, it's hidden from all of us, dude. Like, join the party. Welcome to the club. I didn't know either.
Yeah. And so then Lewis Theron tries to recreate Dragonmount.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he says, I seem to remember dying. I remember how I did it. He drew deeper still, and the small pains grew in Rand's temples. He's remembering, right? This is Rand. He remembers how he committed suicide, how he created Dragonmount, how he pulled the power in. And he yearns for that death, right? Like, he wants to die. And remember, when I say he, I am talking about Rand here, right? At this point, Rand wants to die, and he knows that that's wrong, and realizes that that won't be how he saves the world. He can't die yet, right? But he knows he has to die, and there's a certain amount of, like, I think cognitive dissonance of this, like, you have to die, right? Like, trying to accept that, but at the same time, like, all the suffering he's going through, all the pain he's in, the madness he's dealing with, the voices in his head, like, he wants it to end, and puts that into Lewis Theron.
Right, because he's being asked to live on borrowed time. He's being asked to care about a world he can't live to enjoy. He's being asked to just suffer and die. and still to care about things while he does it, right? He's being expected to laugh at jokes and to be hungry and all these normal human things, and yet also be anticipating the end of his life. And it's a lot to hold on to, and so it makes sense to say that the man who blew up the world is responsible for holding those emotions.
I like Illusion. I agree, Illusion. Same thing. I have a hard enough time when I'm waiting for a doctor's appointment, much less when I'm waiting for my death appointment. Like, it's totally
stuck in appointment waiting mode, but it's for your death. Only miserable thoughts cannot actually do things. Oh my god. Oof. As a person who lives in I live in waiting mode. It's a problem. That is awful. I remember there's a scene in if you've ever watched the Tudors, like the show, The Tudors, it had God, what's her name? From Game of Thrones and Hunger Games and
Emily whatever.
No.
Emily Clark?
Not Emilia Clarke. God damn it, I hate it when I can't remember names. You all know who I'm talking about. Anyway, she played Anne Boleyn, and she was so good in that role. And yeah, there's a scene where like the executioner gets delayed by a day, and she like has this moment of being like really like disappointed because she was so ready for it to be today. She's all dressed up, she's all psyched out, and then they have to come tell her like, sorry, he got delayed on the road. We're gonna have to try again tomorrow. And she's just like, for real? And she goes through this whole cognitive dissonance of like, I get to live for another night. God damn it. I don't want to. I just want this fucking waiting over. I was ready for it. And now I have to like enjoy one more dinner when I already had my last dinner and like all that. Like, and
right.
Natalie Dormer. That's what I'm
okay.
thinking of.
Yes.
And she's just so fucking talented. If you've never seen that and you want to watch a costume drama with talented, sexy people, Natalie Dormer and Jonathan Rhys playing fucking Henry and Anne are just, it's a lot.
As opposed to the Game of Thrones where she dies with no notice
God.
whatsoever, right? It's just explosion and then dead. And it's like, how would you rather die, right? Like, would you rather die with some, like, notice that it's coming so that you can make amends, but also like you have to anticipate that? Or would you rather it be completely sudden and unexpected, like you're here one moment and then gone the next?
Waiting to be executed for weeks, that's rough. The concept of waiting to be executed is just like, definitely better to just have the bomb go off 3 seconds after you realize that there's a bomb. That's vastly superior.
And so I have to color that with something I heard on NPR. They were interviewing a guy who basically he cleaned up dead bodies. That's what his job was, right? So there's a big interview where he goes to basically where bodies have been discovered, days, weeks, months later, right? And he does the cleanup. And at the end of it, they go, you've probably seen a lot of death and thought a lot about it. Like, how do you want to die? And he goes, I want to go slow. I want to have a chance to say goodbye to everyone. I want a chance to put my affairs in order. I want to know that I'm going so that I can arrange things and not be one of these people who's just left and forgotten and nothing's taken care of and nothing's in order. And it was an interesting perspective that was like, oh yeah, sometimes there is something about a slower death that lets you make peace with your life if you want to.
I was just thinking the other day about the phrase died unexpectedly and how that's like a qualifier that's like really changes the timbre of how you respond to someone. Like, oh, someone died.
Sure.
Was it expected or not? Is like which kind of empathy and grief are we looking for here? Is this the like your rug just got pulled out from under you, or is this the conclusion of a thing that you've been dreading, anticipating for a long time? Because those are very different flavors.
And then you can qualify that with died after a long fight, right? Then that's someone who is, yes, it was expected, but they still died too young or died in a place where you expected them to live, right? And so then there's that that's a whole different third kind of reaction that you have where it's like, yes, this is something you've probably been dealing with for a long time, but it's still more tragic than someone who may have died suddenly of old age or a heart attack late in their life,
Yeah, exactly. It's the whole oh wow, they were so young. Exactly. It's like they're all equal griefs, but it's like your brain always wants to bin it out and be like, but what kind?
Well, and it's the difference between shock versus misery that you've dealt with and are expect like.
Right. Yeah. Is shock a part of it or not is kind of the question, really.
Right.
And yeah, being, Rand, as we said before, Rand is living with a terminal illness, and like that's
called being the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah, it's a form of waiting to be executed, right? That is what living with a terminal illness is. You're not going to be executed by the state or by a mob boss, but like you are on limited time.
And realistically, if you're on death row, you're most likely to die from a normal illness anyway. So
after having an absolutely ridiculous life. Like, so many thoughts on that we don't need to get into right now because this episode is long enough.
Okay, so I do have to tell one story.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
This is a great fucking chapter. I'm gonna make you edit the shit out of this. So in, I don't know, 7th, 8th grade, they did that thing where they made you pick a side of a topic and debate. And the topic I got assigned was capital punishment. Yeah. And so I had to go pro.
Okay.
And so I'd never thought about capital punishment before. This is the first time I'd really even, had it flash up on my radar as something that, like, we did. And I looked into it, and I looked into it, and I looked into it, and I was like, I can't, like, it doesn't make you safer. It's not a deterrent on crime. It doesn't cost less. Like, I did all this research, and so I got up in front of them, and they're like, okay, start your argument. And I was like, capital punishment help society by lowering the world human population, and as overpopulation is a problem, we should continue to carry out capital punishment. And I got, and that, and me, now looking back, my autistic little self was like, that's the best argument I can come up with. That is 100%. I got in so much trouble for mocking the process.
Oh my God.
And people were like, they were like, you stood up to that teacher and you told them like how ridiculous the assignment was. And I was like, what? No, that was the best argument I could come up with. Like, I couldn't come up with any other legitimate arguments.
Which, I mean, is the correct critique of the assignment, but like that it's the truth from the mouths of babes rather than like a coherent 4D chess maneuver.
Right. What I was trying, and the reality was like what the teacher should have said is, I understand that that's the only true argument, but you still need to be able to argue the other arguments from their side, right? That's what I didn't understand at the time, is I needed to be able to still formulate the arguments that I didn't necessarily agree with. And I just couldn't do that. I didn't understand how to do that.
Right. Even if they had explained it, maybe you could have learned the mental pretzel, but as an unwritten expectation, like, no, you're going to need to make that real specific.
Right. I can't argue a lie. I've never been able to do it.
No, I can do it sarcastically. I'm great at sarcasm, but like... Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's and from then on out, my stance on capital punishment has been, what a ridiculous thing for us to do as a country.
Yeah.
Like,
there are a handful of times when it becomes a confusing question rather than a clear cut, why would you do this? But like, broadly speaking, why the fuck are we doing this? It's terrible.
Right. There's too many people, and then the more I found out about it, the more about false convictions and stuff like that I've realized it's even more. It's more than just ineffective. It's also just cruel and unreversible in a justice system where we always need to be able to reverse the sentence because we have false convictions all the time.
Yeah. The number of truly complicated people that are actually going to get caught and put in that situation is just so down in the single digits compared to the number of people being wrongfully tortured for their entire lives until they die of some stupid illness in some stupid prison 40 years after being falsely convicted.
Yep.
Anyway. Rand is being suicidal and holding all the power, and Logain suddenly becomes like the watcher for everyone. Like, hey guys, Rand seems to be little brimming with power.
Seems to be on the edge of nuking us all, by the way.
Yeah, so suddenly it becomes a bomb diffusion moment, and Rand's like, why are you all looking at me? I don't understand what the big deal is. And it's like Elaine with wondering why everyone wants to guard her. It's like, because you're the attempting queen of the country. That's why. It's like, Rand, you're acting really weird and you're the dragon reborn. Like, we are concerned. You don't get to be mad that we're concerned. That's who you are.
Also, you seem to be arming that nuclear bomb over there. Is there any reason why you're warming up the nuclear bomb? The bad guys are all dead.
Right?
Could you stop warming up the
Yeah.
nuclear bomb? like, yeah. It's really like we're all here. Like, it really is this moment of like, we need you to calm down after your fight. You were clearly on edge, and again, this separation where Rand has put all of his anxiety and all of his fight or flight into Lewis Theron. And so I'm fine. But he's still having the physical fight or flight panic reaction in his body.
Yeah, which, like, we as autistic people cannot relate to in the slightest. At all. We've never had out-of-body experiences where you're actually sure you're fine and it's just your body that's freaking out for some completely incomprehensible reason. But I swear I'm fine on the inside. Why are you shouting? This is completely unrelatable to us. The blank look you're giving me says I'm hitting the nail maybe 2 on the head.
I have no response. No response.
Yeah, so if any of that felt like a personal attack, like I'm inside your head, hashtag you might be autistic.
Or have some sort of PTSD or some, like there's definitely more. I feel like Jordan's describing something of this like out-of-body experience could come from a lot of different trauma responses and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes, this disassociation is there are many ways to get here. Yeah, it's very, when you're not in tune with how your body and emotions connect, this makes total sense to me, because like it's very hard for me to realize when I'm having an emotion for reasons, and it's just, yeah, I'm fine because I want to be fine in my head. There's a part of me that still thinks they're fine, ergo all of me should be fine, and the everything else you're observing is just a you problem. No, it's just the meat suit. It's just shorting out. Don't it's fine, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about that. Yeah, I've had that happen. Yeah
I'm not.
Yeah. The shorting out meat suit is definitely something that I feel like I'm like, no, my brain's fine. Why am I having trouble physically doing whatever I want to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I might be leaking. Why is there tears coming out of my eyes?
Yeah,
That seems ridiculous.
Necessary.
Yeah. And so Rand keeps escalating until the point where he has to stand up for Min, and he realizes he needs to protect Min. In this case, it's protecting Min from Codswain. Basically, Codswain does her, like, arrogant, broad-handed, really bad, I'm going to fight Rand, right? And Min steps in between them. And suddenly Rand feels like he has to protect Min, and then he says we can die at Tarmangaiden. Basically saying, stand down. For now, we have to protect Min. But of course, it's Min. It's Min that brings him out of it, right?
I had never noticed that. It always seemed like 2 very discordant threads going at the same time, but I like that if you're really seeing Rand and lose as the same person who Rand just doesn't accept that he is 2 people and all of that, then yeah, it totally makes sense that he's on the edge and not sure what to live for, and then suddenly the Rand part of him says, I gotta protect Min, albeit just from Cadswain. It's not in any, like, I gotta protect her from myself or whatever. It's just this little snapping at Cadswain thing. But that's enough for insane Lews Theron to be like, yeah, you're right. We'll come back to this later. We have to.
We got to deal with this Min situation right now.
It's so disconnected, and yet I can see the connection now with the way that you're helping me frame what's happening. It's like, oh, those are not wildly discordant. They actually dovetail perfectly. I see.
I love the way Jordan loves to do that, where he shows you either an internal and an external monologue. They're both it happened with Nynaeve and the healing of Logain.
Yeah.
Right, where her internal monologue and what she's doing seem completely unconnected, and he flips back and forth between the two until there's some snap moment where they are connected. I do notice that he points out all the Tarangrial on Codswain's forehead, which is how she knows that he stops channeling or stops holding the power, right? So he makes sure to point those out, and then she goes, I know, and it's like, how could she possibly know? Oh, maybe those things I just pointed out dangling on her forehead.
Right.
And that's pretty much the end of the chapter. I don't know how much... Is there anything else that we missed that you wanted to talk about?
No, that's all I got.
God, that was just such a good chapter. I love that chapter.
I had a fantastic time doing that chapter. That was just really, really fun. And as you can all tell from the recording being like, or from the episode being like 2 hours long, yeah, we had fun. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah. For once, only one chapter being over 2 hours, that's always a good one.
Yeah. There were some tangents, but also there was just a lot to dig into.
There was a lot. There was a lot to tangent off of, right? There was a lot of things that made me want to talk about other things, right? Like it was.
We were not avoiding the chapter. It was just a lot of stuff to go through. So yeah, this was fantastic. And yeah.
And thank you, chat, as always, for being live. Really appreciate you guys.
You guys are great. Love having you here so much. Truly. I could not imagine doing this without chat. It'd be so weird.
I'm just going to go with I'm standing in your nose and read out the whole part about Min and how he settles out. So, I'm standing on your nose, Rand said. If you want to know how I feel, ask me. Louis Theron, he thought. There was no answer, and the sardine filling him did not slacken. His temples began to throb. Well, Codswain asked impatiently. I feel as right as water, Louis Theron. But I have a rule for you, Codswain. Don't threaten Min again. In fact, leave her alone altogether. Well, the boy shows some teeth. Golden birds and fish, stars and moons swayed as she shook her head. Just don't show too many. And you might ask the young woman whether she wants your protection. Strangely, Min had shifted her frown to him, and the bond was threaded with irritation. Light, it was bad enough she did not like him worrying about her. Now she seemed to want to take on Codswain single-handed, something he would not be eager to do himself. We can die at Tarmangaiden, Louis Theron said, and suddenly the power drained out of him. He released, Logan said, as if he were suddenly on Codswain's side. I know, she told him. He whipped his head around in surprise. Min can deal with you in her own way if she wishes, Rand said, starting for the door. But don't threaten her. Yes, he thought. We can die at Tarmangaiden.
We can die at Tarmangaiden.
The echoing. Him and Louis Theron echoing each other, right? This is very much, they are the same person. Jordan is trying to tell us that.
And they are both insane.
Yes. Absolutely nuts. Absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. There's not nary a brain cell of sanity between them.
God, that's so fun.
Yeah, that was just fantastic.
And next week, the Golden Crane rides for Tarmangaiden.
Oh my god. The Golden Crane. The Golden Crane. The Golden Crane. It's so good. It's so good. We're in such an exciting part of the book now. I'm so excited. Oh, thank you, Leather Jen.
And that one, of course, has the best chapter icon, the Nodding Ravens.
Yes, naturally.
All right, everybody. Turn off recording?
Yeah, let's turn recording off. That's going to be plenty for me to edit.
Yeah, I will pick your brain about WotCon, but
Recording is on.
we've got nothing to say about Jordan Con because we didn't go.
Yeah, it's just...
That's what we have to say. I guess that's what we can say. We didn't go to Jordan Con.
Yeah, it looked like fun from a distance on Twitter. I mean, you know, it was a thing that was happening on Twitter. It looked great. I look forward to WotCon because it's my opportunity to experience all of that directly. But, yeah.
I will say, as much as I love WotCon, and but man, Atlanta's a better place to go than Ohio.
It doesn't really matter to me because I just go to the hotel. So
that's true, but I was gonna say, but then it doesn't really matter because you're just in the hotel with the con people, so it feels exactly the same.
The first year at WotCon, I did go on the field trip to the book loft in like Germantown or whatever it's called. But that was like a 40-minute drive and then a 40-minute claustrophobia fest in a tiny little building and then a 40-minute wait for 1,000 coffee orders and then a 40-minute drive back. And so year 2, I did not indulge in a field trip to anywhere. I just stayed at the hotel, and that was fine. So I really don't care what cities. And I'm going to have to fly up and over the Rocky Mountains and land in one of the mountain states, and then fly on a second flight to wherever the con is. So all of that's the same.
And then you're going to get off and take a taxi to the hotel, and then you're going to be in a hotel until you reverse the trip. Yeah.
Exactly. I'll group up with people going to the con at the airport. We will all group ride to the hotel. It's just like that's what the con's going to be either way. And WotCon has stolen my heart. So sorry, Jordan Con.
Yeah, and this year I'm not doing anything because I'm getting married.
Yeah, you're doing it. You're doing something. It's called getting
I'm doing
married.
Something. Getting married. Yeah. And so time, money, vacation time is all going towards that this year.
Yeah.
And I early on made the decision that I do not have the bandwidth or the ability to do both, or the money.
No. Yeah. I even if money was not an object, I would still not have the bandwidth to go to 2 cons in a summer. Like, I'm gonna do one of these a year. That's even if money was not an object, and money is very much an object. But even if it wasn't.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?